on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to the Mac and Fish podcast. I'm Coach McKinley Roll, and I'm here with my co-host, Charles Fishbein, better known as Fish. Fish, what's going on?
What up?
Today, we actually have Corey Long with us. We're going to do a college football roundup, and this is going to be a weekly series that we're going to go over and talk about college football, a couple games from this past weekend, and our thoughts on them. So, first game is going to be the Clemson-Wake Forest. Fish, talk a little bit about the game and your opinion and your thoughts.
Yeah, Clemson got off to a fast start. They were up 37-3, and then after that point, they kind of, pulled their foot off the gas, and they ended up getting outscored 10-0 in the final quarter once they started putting their backups. But you could see their starters. Trevor Lawrence was 22 of 28. He was responsible for 3 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 2 rushing, 1 passing. Travis Etienne once again had a very good game with 17 rushes and over 100 yards and a touchdown. Even DeMarcus Bowman, the freshman running back from Lakeland, who Corey and I know very well, he got in the action. He had 6 rushes for about 25 yards, and Amari Rogers was their leading receiver with 5 catches and 90 yards. So overall, good night. They got a lot of the things they wanted to accomplish done. They were able to pull the starters early, get to see a lot of the backups, and that's how great teams are built in college football. You go back all the way back to the Nebraska teams, the FSU teams, the Miami teams, the Florida teams, Alabama. The teams that win, they get off the field early in the third quarter. They're able to build that depth. You saw it again with Clemson. There are some holes in their team. They're not, there's guys at receiver that they've lost with Justin Ross out with a season-ending injury and T. Higgins. So you saw a drop-off a little bit. But overall, as long as they have Trevor Lawrence, this team's going to be a national championship contender. And once again, one of the best teams in college football.
Corey, what do you think?
Pretty similar. I mean, as Clemson tends to do, they got out to a little bit of a slow start when they play teams that that are overmatched. And they got out to a little bit of a slow start, but once they get rolling, they're just you don't see a ton of weaknesses. Lawrence, I thought, looked great. I thought most of his passes were on time. Wake Forest wasn't the type of team that was going to really expose anything. So, I mean, they looked good in all facets. They were fast on the defensive front. They're big on the offensive line. Travis Etienne is a tremendous running back. Obviously, we know about Lawrence, their receivers. Everybody seemed to be, in essence, what is, that first real game out. You didn't have a spring game. They didn't open up with Wolford like they normally do in one of the, Clemson doesn't open up with a pretty easy contest. So they looked very good. I thought they just looked like, they're the number 1 team. They looked pretty close to that.
Yeah, well, a little bit of my thoughts on the Clemson game, watching it. I mean, you could see Lawrence is special. He had a Heisman-type performance in that game. They're just very explosive offensively. Their offensive line, I believe, is very young, and you saw there's chinks in that armor, but their skill players are ridiculous. I really like Galloway and Rogers at receiver. I think Galloway just gives them such a big body that can run and can stretch the field. The defense was very impressive. They held Wake Forest to 37 yards on 34 carries, which is, ridiculous. So I just think that's a Clemson team. That's what we're getting used to seeing, and it's going to be a formidable opponent. They're going to be in for the national title run again. So, very, very explosive.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed, though, is they definitely have to keep Trevor upright. As good as he is, and they've been very lucky, they did lose a quarterback to Duke who did start this week, in the Bryce kid. And you saw the drop-off between him and the highly touted backup DJ. DJ has a ton of talent. He's a physical talent. He's going to be really good. But the consistency from play to play, they can't count on him like they do with Trevor. Like Trevor, you know what you're going to get play in and play out, and he makes the players around him better. That's what great players do. That's what Jameis did. That's what Tim Tebow did. That's what this kid does. And that's why they're so difficult to play against, and they're going to be difficult to play against this year, is that when they step on the field, they are always going to have the best player on the field, no matter what. Trevor will be the best player on the field at all times. And that gives you a major edge when you're stepping on that field playing anyone. You know when you're out there like, hey, the odds of us losing this game are very slim.
Well, I also think that one thing that I saw about Clemson, and I think they need to be concerned about, is that they actually have designed runs for Trevor Lawrence. And you're running the future number 1 draft pick in the 2021 draft. I mean, he's liable to get hurt. And you said it yourself. I mean, there's a tremendous drop off from Lawrence to the number 2 quarterback. And that's with anything. But when you have a generational talent like Trevor Lawrence, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, there's only 2 things that are going to stop Trevor Lawrence: him getting injured or him getting COVID. That's one of those 2 things. It's not going to be any defense they play.
No, definitely not. Not this year.
I mean, his arm comes off the table. What do you think, Corey? I mean, what makes Lawrence so special? I mean, obviously it's the physical attributes, but what else do you think?
I think, when you take out all the attributes and all the brass tacks out, the kid is a dogged competitor. He's just a tremendous competitive kid. I think we saw it last year in the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State. The game where Ohio State was the better team for most of the game. I mean, they jumped out 16-0, and you really weren't, they were looking so good, you weren't sure what was going to happen. You didn't expect Trevor Lawrence to bust out a 65-yard touchdown run, but there it is. It happened. And, and I think you start adding in the experience that he's had. He's been a starter for, the better part of 3 seasons. And it's an intangible thing that goes beyond. It's the leadership. I think it's his competitive nature. When you get to the stuff that he does on the field, his accuracy is so good. His passes are on time. Clemson runs a lot of crossing stuff, a lot of stuff across the field. His passes are always, he doesn't miss those throws. I think he plays with an utmost level of confidence. I just don't see a lot of flaws in his game. And the thing is, he's been doing this since from day one. This isn't like a Joe Burrow thing where he kind of just came out of nowhere and threw for 10,000 yards in a season. Trevor's been doing this since he got on the field. So the consistency that we've seen over 3 years, no drop off, no area where he's hit like a wall or a lull. It just tells me a lot. I think his work ethic is strong. I think just overall, I think his belief in himself, his confidence, the team's confidence in him, his leadership, his ability to bring other top guys up to his level. I think he just has it all. I think intangible-wise, he has everything you'd want in a franchise quarterback.
Yep. And in this day and age where guys sit out bowl games now, players are opting out with the COVID-19, he has every reason to not play this year. I mean, he's guaranteed to be the first pick in the draft. He's won a national title. The only thing really left, I believe, is to win the Heisman Trophy. There's not much left for him to accomplish, and he's that guy that wants to play. There's not going to be any, like I said, he's not worried about getting hurt. He's a team player, and that's what makes him so special in this day and age of where guys want a reason to tap out, and he hasn't.
Yeah, no doubt.
I look at it like, Clemson, you have a generational player like Deshaun Watson, and you follow him up with a generational player like Trevor Lawrence. You're talking about hitting the lottery twice. It just doesn't happen.
No doubt.
There's a lot of great players, but you're talking about generational type talents. You don't get 2 in a 6-year span. It's just not fair.
Well, we're gonna talk about that. With FSU, we're still looking for that next Jameis. But talking about Miami versus UAB. Miami obviously came out, did what they were supposed to do, won a game convincingly. But starting with you, Corey, give me your thoughts on the UAB Miami game.
Miami had a lot of moving parts, a lot of new parts, so I wasn't surprised that it took a while for things to kind of gel. And I think there's going to be some growing pains. They got a big game this Saturday coming up against Louisville that I think is really going to be a heck of a test. But once Rhett Lashley got an idea of what the guys could do well, I think we saw it pretty quickly that, they were able to find the runs. I think they ran for about 337 yards, give or take, on a little over 50 carries. And, we got to see, different guys carrying the ball, different levels of explosion. Cam Harris with a nice touchdown run. Jalen Knighton is going to be the starting running back there, I think, by week 5 or 6. I think he's just too good to not get 15 to 20 carries minimum a game. I feel like their running attack is, that's where they're going to get confidence for their offensive line. That's where they're going to draw that, there's still a young group that's not fully confident. That's where those guys are going to come together. Derek King does a great job at extending the play, making plays when nothing's there. At times, he was left out to dry by his offensive lineman. He generally made something happen. Defensively, without Rousseau, I knew they might have a few problems getting the pass rush, but Quincy Roche showed as the game went on that he started to get more comfortable coming off the edge and got his timing down. And he looks like he's I don't think he can make up for Greg's production, but he's going to be a player, and he's definitely, going to be somebody that as the season goes on is going to get a lot of sacks. It was a good win for them. I think UAB is a good mid-major team. Bill Clark is one of the better coaches in the country. So you knew they were going to be ready. They were going to be tough. And I thought, Miami did what they needed to do. They physically overmatched them and wore them down over time.
Yeah,
finish up in there.
When I look at the game, it's funny. They were the first game of basically the college football season. All the eyes were on them. It was a Thursday night. So a lot of times, being that first game, a lot of people will judge you because there's nothing else to really judge it against. So if you struggle early on, you hear the detractors. I saw it on social media right away. It's funny, but as the game went on, Miami showed one thing, is that they have an identity, and that identity is going to be to run that football. And I think that rubs off on other guys. In this day and age of everybody wanting to chuck the ball all over the field, Miami came out, and one thing is guys on defense do not like to get blocked on run plays, or play after play after play. And that, I think this is going to be the identity of this Miami offense this year. They're going to be able to run with the quarterback. They're going to be able to run with their running backs. They're going to win games by beating teams up front, and that offensive line will get better as they're able to get more and more reps. And I think King is a lot better passer than he's shown. I know he is, because I had the opportunity to watch him in one of their spring practices, and he was throwing the ball all over the field. And I believe in one of the final scrimmages, he had like 6 touchdowns. So he could throw it. He's inconsistent, but that ability to do both the run and pass is going to make it very difficult on defenses. You're not going to be able to just key on their run game or be able to key on him because of his ability to do so much. So I think as this team gets 2, 3, 4 games down the road, they're going to become tougher. And as long as Manny's the coach, they're always going to have a pretty good defense. Rousseau is a big loss, but the Phillips kid that came from UCLA, he has shown some ability in that first game. And Roach is going to be a very good player. Their big concerns inside is that defensive tackle position. They don't have that Vince Wilfork or that Warren Sapp or that dominant guy in the middle. Now, Nesta Silvera is a guy that could potentially down the road become that guy, but right now, if they have a weakness on that team, is up the gut. And that's a scary thing, because a lot of teams they play are going to be able to exploit that. But as long as they got the playmaker at quarterback, they have a chance in any game they play in this year.
Yeah.
I thought the linebacker play was a little concerning too. I thought if there was really, I knew they graduated some some upperclassmen at linebacker, so they were working in a lot of young guys. That was an area I think that if I had to really pinpoint, D tackle is a problem. I think linebacker play is something they're gonna have to get better at quickly.
Yeah, and Fish, if you remember when we talked to Chris Stock, one of the things he was talking about was the new or the younger inside linebackers. So, that's going to be a position to watch for them. I also, looking at the game, Miami outgained UAB, almost 210 yards. They had 495 yards of offense, holding UAB to 285 yards. They also won a turnover battle. D'Eriq had a very efficient game. Obviously, he had to get in a groove and get some consistency, but his ability to run the ball, and like you talked about, Fish, and extend plays, that's going to be tremendously hard to defend. And that's going to make them a better team in the long run. Cam Harris had a big game on the ground. One thing you looked at Miami, as far as last year, you saw the improvement of how they were converting on third down. And they also stopped defensively UAB as well on third down, and that's a money down. That's how you show that you're a good football team.
Yeah, they had a 3rd and 15, and D'Eriq was getting pressured. I think there was like 3 or 4 guys that had a chance to sack him, and all of a sudden he pulls a Houdini and ends up like 20 yards down the field. And now they're, instead of punting, which they did the last couple of years, they sustained a drive, and eventually that becomes mentally draining and demoralizing to the other team. That when you have a team in their worst position and they can still make a play, eventually, if you're on the other side, you're gonna submit, and that's what happened with UAB. They're a very good football team, but at the end, there was too many possessions on Miami's side where they won those battles, and it eventually won the war for them. So.
Talking about FSU, Georgia Tech. FSU lost the opener 16-13 at home in Tallahassee. Classic case of letting a team stick around too long. They came out, obviously there was many delays to start the game. They came out pretty hot, but this FSU offense was just abysmal. James Blackman, in my opinion, is the same quarterback he's been for the last 3 years. He hasn't shown any kind of consistency, and he may have been outplayed by a true freshman that was committed to FSU for many years. You can't win a game with 3 turnovers and 370 yards. Defense played well enough to win, but the offense was one-dimensional. They had absolutely no running game established, and it was very easy to defend. Fish, give your thoughts on the FSU Georgia Tech game.
Coming into the season, I've studied the teams, whether it's Miami, Florida State, and broken them down, and I felt that this was a team that was flawed, and it's not Coach Norvell's fault. They're the coaches that are there. They inherited a team that the talent that's there, it's there, and offensively, I saw one scrimmage, they showed some footage of the running backs, and Jay Sean Corbin, who was a top-rated recruit, was very explosive coming out of high school. He was injured at Texas A&M, and you saw it on Saturday, the lack of burst. Now, he had a couple flash plays, but they were 10-yard plays. They weren't those Dalvin Cook or Cam Akers type plays where they break off 10 yards, and the next thing you know, there's 60 yards in the end zone celebrating. And that's the one thing, is they're going to have such a difficult time creating big plays this year. And I think at the college level, if you got to grind out 10, 12, 14 play drives, it puts a ton of pressure on the quarterback. It puts a ton of pressure on the offense. And you're talking college kids. One mistake, and you're now looking at 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 15. And let's be realistic. James Blackman isn't the type of quarterback that is going to play well enough behind the sticks. He has to be in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, plus situations. And I think early on, you saw in the game, Coach Norvell did a very good job of that. He was able to keep Blackman in those short yardage situations and plus situations, and their offense was clicking. But once Georgia Tech made us some adjustments, all of a sudden, a lot of those possessions became longer drives, bad yardage situations, and eventually it caught up to them, and that's why they lost the game.
Well, I want to hit on a couple of things before we let Corey jump in that you said. First, I think roster management is on the coaching staff. Ultimately, you knew going in that what you had at quarterback, and you brought in 2 freshmen, okay, and then you have James Blackman, who he is. This kid has not shown any. One thing I would say, his attitude was better. But ultimately, he's the same player he was, and he has been. So that's on the coaching staff. Also, another thing you talked about was adjustments. You talked about Georgia Tech making adjustments. How many adjustments did we see really FSU do, right? So that is in-game coaching. That is on the coaching staff. We can't always put everything on the players all the time. We need to also address the coaches and what they do and what they bring to the table as well. Corey, hop in.
Yeah, I agree with you on, especially on the roster management part. I mean, I was on Twitter for a lot of that game, and I said, when it got back to the Jeff Sims situation, and there are conflicting reports on how it happened. I tend to lean toward the side of, frankly, Mike Norvell just didn't want him. He didn't think he was his guy. He wanted Chubba Purdy, who I think was committed to Louisville at the time, and felt like if he dropped Sims, he'd have a better chance at Purdy, and that was where he wanted to go. I jokingly said, but I mean it. The first rule of College Football Fight Club is to get as many good quarterbacks as you can, and there was no reason why part of being a recruiter is to make Jeff Sims understand that you're trying to build the most competitive quarterback room in the nation. And you need to bring in other good quarterbacks. And, do you want to still come to the program? Well, if he loved the program as much as he claims he did, then he should still want to come and compete and fight for a job. And you don't worry about depth because that's going to take care of itself if you bring enough talented bodies. Guys are going to either decide to stay and fight or they're going to go. That's just going to happen. But you never turn down talent. So that right away told me that, and we can get into Norvell a bit. I don't think he's a bad. I'm not going to let one game determine whether he's good or bad fit or not. But I agree. There are levels to college football. There are levels to this game, and you have to be like the stuff that he did at Memphis in terms of recruiting and that doesn't work. That doesn't work at Florida. You're in a much bigger animal, a much tougher animal. Like Georgia Tech is probably the bottom 3 in the ACC, but they've got an Under Armour All-American at quarterback. The bottom 3 in the American Conference don't have anything. You don't have to scheme for those teams. You can go out there and run 4 verts if you're at Memphis and just beat them by 30 points. So, this is a whole different animal. So that right there, I think, that's a lesson that he learned right away, I think. It's he got lucky in a way that you learn that sort of a lesson right out the gate, that a guy that you shunned comes back and gets one on you in your house as an 18-year-old freshman. You that's something you take to heart, and you realize, if you're an honest man, you look back and say, okay, I got to chalk that up. That was my bad. Now, getting to the game itself, there are a lot of concerns about the offense. I don't see any explosive players, really. Tamorrion Terry's a good receiver. He's going to give you some numbers. He'll give you some big plays. He's made some big plays in the past, and I think he's got some more to do in the future. Keyshawn Helton, I was happy to see him get a touchdown. He had 1 carry. He didn't have any other touches in the game, so I'm not sure what happened there. The other guys like Wilson, seems like he's just a guy. Orrin Thompson has some physical talent, but mentally, I question why he started anyway, because I don't know mentally if he's ready to be a starting wide receiver at Florida State. Like dropping passes, getting emotional. These are things that supposedly the new staff was supposed to get rid of. But, when you've got a team, as I said, I think FSU, it's a broken team. I don't think they're confident. I don't think they believe in themselves. I think they've had the worst case scenario happen to them so many times in the past 3 years that I think that's just embedded in their systems. And this is the thing, we're going to find out a lot about the one thing Mike Norvell hasn't done at this point is had to rebuild. When he went to Memphis, Justin Fuente had won, I think they won 19 games in their final 2 seasons. He wasn't there when Fuente took over the team that won 2-10. He didn't have to see all the trash that Fuente had to take out and the guys he had to keep and how he had to figure that thing out on the fly. So this is going to be a big learning lesson for him. This is not, he realized right away that these guys can, as talented as they look at times, they can absolutely blow up on you. And that's what happened. I think, there were certain things during the game. I look at Asante Samuel. Why both of those interceptions weren't touchdowns is beyond me. They both should have been 6 points.
I agree.
In one case, number 7 didn't block. He didn't block the offensive lineman he was supposed to. If he does, it's a touchdown.
Correct.
And the other one, if Samuel slows up and lets his trailer come up and take out the guy that tackles him, he cuts back and he scores. So I don't really – but that's neither here nor there. But those were situations where they could have gotten easy points. Special teams was phenomenal. Their special teams was, from the coverage on the first kick, you get 3 block kicks. I think Travis Jay had a couple nice returns. The punter was good. They missed a long field goal, but coverage and everything I thought was good. Their special teams was tremendous. Offensively, once Blackman threw that pick, which was 3rd and 16, he's flushed out of the pocket. Throw the ball away, or at least throw it far down. If you're going to get picked, throw the ball 40 yards down the field. It's 3rd and 16. He throws a 5-yard out that gets picked. Well, if it's completed, what does it do? It's just that's his mind is not process the game where it needs to be for him to be an FSU quarterback. That's and I thought, and I told Fish this, and I might have told you this. Had they had a full spring, I think Jordan Travis would have gotten a lot closer to being the number 1 quarterback. Because I think they would have figured out that we can run this guy out on the edge. If we can teach him a simple passing tree, we can get this guy out on the edge. We can use his feet. He gives us a lot of options that Blackman just does not give you. They need a running back. They need a real running back. These guys, I think Jashawn Corbin is a really good number 2 guy, a multi-purpose guy. He had 8 catches for 55 yards, I think. LaDamian Webb had 13 carries. He's not explosive. He's not an explosive kid. He's a little small, and I don't think he's, that's not a guy you can really count on to be a running back. They need a running back when you've got questions at quarterback and questions up front. A lot of questions. You need a running back that can break some tackles, that can give those guys confidence. You notice they couldn't run up the middle. They didn't even try. They don't have a number 1 back. The Webb kid, LaDamian Webb, he's not explosive. He's not really quick to the edge. So there's not a lot you can do with them. And they don't have a back that they can just give the ball to that can give the offensive line confidence, that can shorten the game, that can make the quarterback position flow a little easier. But, at the end of the day, the coaches were not confident in what they had. They didn't try to run the ball up the middle. They didn't try any power running, really. They're not confident in what they had, and the players were not confident out on the field.
Yeah, let me just jump in there. I think a big reason of that, Corey, is, I went back and looked at a lot of the Memphis film, and he likes to use a lot of 2 and 3 tight ends to run his power runs, especially up the gut. They don't have those tight ends, and so he's going to have to look at that roster and go, all right, well, the one kid, the Goss kid's never going to gain the weight. Do we move him to tight end and he's a blocking tight end for them so they can start running some of those power runs in the middle? That's one thing I noticed at Memphis. They liked to run power up the gut, but they don't have the personnel, so they're going to have to make some adjustments on that end. But one point I wanted to go back real quick on the quarterbacks and, talking about Sims and what, Norvell likes. One of the things is that I think in college football, coaches make this mistake, and I've tried to talk to so many different coordinators, is with quarterbacks, is a lot of times coaches try to find that guy that fits their system. And I think when you go back and you look at Lamar Jackson, Lamar was a guy that did not fit Petrino's system, but he adjusted his offense to his skill set. And we've now seen the results of that. And then I just think sometimes you got to sit there and go, all right, maybe this guy doesn't fit my system, talking about Jeff Sims, but he's got some great traits. And you saw him on Saturday. The kid's very poised. He runs the ball very, he's not a 4-4 guy, but he's very efficient and smooth when he runs. He picked up. So a lot of times you got to sit there and go, all right, well, maybe this guy doesn't fit exactly what we're looking for, but if we build an offense around him, we could have a ton of success. And you've seen it with Lamar Jackson. I think coaches are afraid to make those changes with guys, even if they got great talent. You're not going to find, Clemson's not going to find the next Trevor Lawrence. They're going to just have to find the next great quarterback. Florida State's not going to find another Jameis. They got to just find another great quarterback. And I just think that's the one thing, is kind of like offensive line, and why FSU's offensive line is so bad, is that they've tried to find these perfect guys and perfect fits, and they've recruited those two areas wrong. And you take example, going to the offensive line real quick off another subject, is Maurice Smith was not your typical offensive lineman that Florida State's going to recruit. He's 6'2.5", he's 280, but you know what? He's a great freaking football player. How about you recruit those guys? They don't have any of those guys on the football team. And until they do, I think this is a long process.
But Fish, I want to hop in and just go over what how does this improve, right? We're looking at their current recruiting class right now, and then you say, are they fixing those spots that they're struggling in, that we see currently on the field right now? It's not. It does not get better. It does not get better.
I don't think it's going to get better in this recruiting cycle, because there's too many things going against them. They're going to go to the portal, and they're going to try to put lipstick on a pig. They're going to go out and sign. I think that you're going to see as many as 10 to 15 grad transfers and transfers come in after this season. That's the only way he's going to turn around this program really quick, because you look at the talent on that field on Saturday night, and those guys are smart guys in that room. Trust me, these coaches aren't stupid. No. All right, they may not be perfect, but they're not dumb. Those guys know what talent looks like. It ain't on that field, and they know that for them to win quickly, to get to 6, 7, 8 wins, they're going to have to flip that roster. And the only way they're going to do that is they're going to have to go out and get grown men, JUCOs, and grad transfers. And that's going to be, I believe, his answer to fixing the problems.
I agree. And I mean, you look at just kind of what Corey was talking about, their special teams play. I love to see that improvement, because that's a third of the game that can ultimately talk about coaching. I don't want to just rag on, the coaching staff. I think they have a good coaching staff, and one that can win at Florida State. It's just that the combination and talent has to all come together, and the roster management, like you said, they have to flip that roster, because right now I didn't see many NFL guys out there on Saturday, and they're going to have to do something to interject and change the dynamic of that team. Offensive line, you look at it, I thought Coach Atkins, I thought did a great job. I thought they played, they don't have a bunch of All-Americans out there, and they held their own.
That's the best O-line's played in a couple years.
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly, they were not they did not lose a game. I know, you go to the internet, and a lot of people want to blame Chaz Neal on that block, and I got to tell you, even something like that, Chaz was not put in a position. It was a 3rd and 16. They went play action, and this kid had to single block a guy that was probably been playing football, starting for 2 or 3 years at Georgia Tech, and the kid hand beat him. He didn't beat him like Bello and Juan Williams got beat. But, two things that may change the offense a little bit, and there'll be drastic changes, but we talked to Coach Coe a couple weeks ago. Travis Jay, is he an option at quarterback? The kid was special in high school at quarterback. And 2, moving Jordan Travis to running back. I looked at a kid that's a natural runner. Can he play? I think they're going to have to make some drastic changes on this offense to score this year, and it may take something like that.
Fish, that's not going to be maybe the Travis J one, I think, is too drastic. I think that Travis moving a running back could work, but if Jay's not getting reps in practice, if hasn't done it already, that's just in season right now. They're in season.
They need playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. So if he has to come over and play running back or receiver, they need guys that can make one catch or one run, and they can break it off. You saw it last year with Jordan Travis. He had 60-yard runs. You got to get these guys the ball because honestly, their offense is with what they have and with the quarterback they have. You can't expect James Blackman to have 10, 12 plays and not make a mistake. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, they don't have playmakers on offense, like I said, And when we ask about, recruiting and what they, they still don't have a feature back in their 2021 class. I don't think they have a natural pass rusher, a long, lean, quick twitch guy. They've got some ends that I think are big containment ends, but I don't think they've got a real legitimate pass rusher. They had two in the class that ended up decommitting last year, Keyshawn Green, who went to Nebraska and now is at the FAU, and Morvin Joseph, who decommitted to go to Tennessee. They haven't been able to replace – they have no pass rush, So defensively, I tend to agree on both with you, with Fish and McKinley. I thought they were okay. I mean, they got some turnovers. I consider special teams part of defense, and special teams was tremendous. But at the same time, their inability to get to the quarterback with a four-man rush eventually bit them. That's how you get guys like Janarius Robinson lost in coverage at times. You get, they have to play off on guys. It just, and eventually, a young kid like Jeff Sims got confidence knowing that his line could hold up. And as you saw in the second half of that game, he was fine standing in the pocket. He was still willing to tuck it and make plays running, but they didn't, FSU does not have a player on defense that somebody fears, like their quarterback is fearful of. Marvin Wilson, I think, is a very good player at D tackle, but, he's not getting the sort of pass. He's not Corey Simon. He's not Tim Jernigan. He's not that level of player. So they lack the guy. FSU used to scare quarterbacks. When they knew that when Peter Bulwer and Raynard Wilson got off the bus, quarterbacks were frightened because they didn't think they were going to make it through the game. The pass rush that they have now, they just don't have one.
I mean, they had that with Bjorn Warner. They had it with Tank Carradine. They had it with Brandon Jenkins. They don't have there was a guy last year at South Miami High School that Georgia Tech ironically took. He didn't play this weekend. That was that type of pass rusher. I just think that those are guys you're going to have to find a guy that's maybe a little 6'2", 6'2 and a half, 6'3", undersized for an end, but has that ability to get off the ball. And that's one thing Manny's done a great job at Miami. They've signed a lot of these guys. Rousseau was a wide receiver in high school as a freshman or sophomore and converted to defensive end. He was on at Monarch with Jerry Jeudy and them or one of those teams. He was a freshman just going into the ninth grade as a wide receiver. And that's, you got to find these guys that are 6'4", 6'5", maybe they're only 215, but you could tell that they can run and they can get off the ball. Brian Burns never got above 230 at Florida State, but he was an elite pass rusher. And it changes your whole defense as a coordinator. If you have guys, especially if you got a front four, you don't have to blitz, and you got a guy off the edge that could come off, you could do so much on the back end. And you saw Florida State, they can't do a whole lot of stuff on the back end because they don't have enough. The guys up front don't make enough noise up front. And until they do that, they're going to be a good defense. I don't think they could be a great defense. You're looking at a defense that should be top 10 or 15 in the country this year. And without that pass rusher, I don't know if they're going to get to that level.
And I know Adam Fuller is known as a coach that likes to send pressure. and you can use some bells and whistles and send guys from different ways. And one of those pressures worked. Amari Gaynor had a great sack on a jailbreak. But if you can't get a rush with if you can't get to the passer with a 4-man rush at this level, you can't do anything really. Like you gotta be able to get to the quarterback with a 4-man rush.
No, I think you guys are right, and that's something that they're going to have to do. I mean, you got to rush the passer. You got to have guys that can cover. Got to have a quarterback. And
what's crazy, McKinley, they literally have like 7 or 8 of the same type of DNs on their team. And if you want, like really, Janarius Robinson and Kendo are really the same position. They should both be playing the same position. And then maybe you take on Amari Gaynor. I know he's undersized, but they may have to put him at defensive end this year on pass rush downs because they are not going to have success on that side of the ball if they can't get pressure on the quarterback.
No doubt.
Yeah, I think another guy when he returns is Nazrul Dean. I think that's another guy they're going to have to Jamal Lewis him and Jamal Adams, put him at a lot of different levels to get pressure on a quarterback. Like he's going to have to come in and rush the passer on occasion. I think Fish, you're right with Gaynor too. They're going to have to really get creative, way more creative than they were.
Yeah. Well, Corey, give us a little bit about USF and their game.
Yeah, real quickly. I mean, they were playing the Citadel. It was the weather was the tropical storm was kind of hanging on the coast, so it was a pretty dreary, rainy day. Their offensive line, USF's offensive line, isn't very good still. It's still kind of a work in progress. We'll see how bad it is next week when they play Notre Dame. We'll get a real good idea of how bad it is. But they hung in there. They were able to run the ball. They got a special teams touchdown. I thought overall the team played with a tremendous amount of energy. I feel like, with what the roster that he had, Jeff Scott put out the best players that he could. If you look at the 2 deep, I looked at the depth chart. I looked at it and I said, okay, these 44 guys are probably by far the best guys he's got on the roster. So he's got to build up that group behind them, but those 44 guys can at least make them competitive all season. They rushed for over 300 yards, and they had a bunch of guys do it. They had, I think like 13 guys, not that 13, like 11 guys got carries in the game. And, they got a couple of big runs. They got a big run from Kelly Joyner, who came in and gave him a really big run. He's out of, I think he's out of South Lake High School. And they got a big run from Ford, who was I think he was a transfer kid, if I'm not mistaken, Johnny Ford, who I think he transferred from Oregon, if I'm not mistaken.
Johnny Ford's been there.
Ford's been there. They had another kid that transferred from Oregon and North Carolina. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they got the kid. Did the Darian Felix kid maybe from Oregon?
Darian Felix is the one I'm talking about. Yeah. Felix came in and he did some. He did some special teams for them. He did some kick return. He did some different things for them in that role. He didn't have a lot actually running the ball, but he did a few things for them otherwise. Jordan McLeod played. He played 3 quarterbacks. None of them were great because, again, they weren't passing the ball a lot. They didn't have a lot of time to throw. There's work to do there at USF. He's got, it's definitely going to be a project. They're not going to I have to look at their schedule. I don't see more than 4 or 5 wins out of that team this year. But like I said, I love the way they played with energy. I thought defensively they were flying around. Like if you don't, I think the one thing that Jeff Scott has preached to this team is that if you're not sure if you're in the right spot or not, just attack the ball. Just go hard. Go fast. And that was the one thing I saw from them is that at times I was like, oh, this guy's out of position. But he worked his way back in by just continuing to pursue. I think he's just getting those guys to play hard again. And, play with a purpose has been his big thing.
Gotcha.
Watching them last year, Corey, they lost their desire to play football.
Yeah.
They quit on Coach Strong, and it's a sad thing, but there's probably enough talent there, like you said, for them to get close to 500. They still have some guys. They're in a conference that, the bottom half of it's not the greatest, so they could, poach a couple wins here and there. But they are going to get a wake-up call from Notre Dame, because I thought Notre Dame played about as poorly as you could in an opener and still beat a team pretty soundly. Like, they're going to get a mad Notre Dame team this weekend, and it will be interesting to see how they respond, USF.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I think as long as it gets them playing hard every week, I mean, they've got Notre Dame, and they've got FAU, and they've got Cincinnati. So they've got three kind of, tough games in a row for them. And I think as long as it gets those guys to play hard, even if they're not winning, they'll be able to get those victories on the back end of their schedule.
All right. Best team that you saw play this past week. Fish, who you got?
I mean, I definitely think Clemson's the best team. I don't think that's a shocker there. I do think they're beatable. I don't think this is the same Clemson team they've had the last 2 or 3 years, but it's going to take, probably an SEC team in the playoffs to beat them. I don't see them losing in the regular season. Maybe Notre Dame, because the game's up there and Kelly's a great coach, but that's the only shot they have of losing a game this year.
Corey, best team you saw this week?
I mean, Clemson is the best team. The best team I saw, Louisiana, Billy Napier. What a game. What an amazing coaching job that he's done. I think his agent is just sitting there. His agent can go out there and buy his next house. His agent right now can go out there and buy his boat if he wants, because Billy Napier is going to get all the money this offseason. He's been a damn good coach at Louisiana for a couple of years. They went out there and they beat up Matt Campbell, who is supposedly that next great guy. They went in there and they crushed Iowa State, beat them in all three facets. Got 2 kick returns on special teams, went in there, closed the game out, shut them down defensively. I was really impressed with Louisiana. I've been impressed with Billy Napier over the last few years, but their offensive line coach passed away. So that was a really big emotional victory. And, I'm a big fan of him as a coach. There's a couple guys out there that I really like as a coach, and Billy Napier is one of those guys. So all props to Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns this week, for going out into Ames, Iowa, and just dominating that Iowa State team.
Corey, what's kind of funny about Billy Napier is I spoke to Kevin Steele, it must have been 7-8 years ago, and Coach Steele said, this is one of the next superstar coaches in college football. He will be a head coach, and he's going to be a great one. And it's always stuck in my mind. Florida State hired him. I think Jimbo had him in there for like a week, and he ended up at Alabama. But he's worked his way up and now has put himself in position as the number one guy in the offseason. He's going to be the guy that if an SEC job comes open or one of these big-time jobs, I think you're going to see a lot of programs go after him.
Yeah,
I look at him. I just see a winner. He looks like a guy that's going to win you a lot of ball games. Like every team seems to do everything right. The little details, and they can line up and hit with you. They're not out there trying to play a sneaky game. He's gonna. His guys play hard. They play tough, and they've developed them well there.
Yeah, best team I saw was obviously Clemson, but like you said, Corey, I was really impressed with the Raging Cajuns. But I'll tell you who's kicking himself right now is Matt Campbell. You want to talk about someone who stopped. He could have gone to any school he wanted to go to, and, he's staying at Iowa State. I mean, that's a tough job, and he definitely is going to lose a little bit of his luster, all the cream that was going on. Everyone was going crazy about this guy, but he's a good ball coach, but I just think that Iowa State is a tough place to win at, and it's a shame.
Bartu, or whatever the guy's name is, going to have to change his saber, whatever the hell he calls it, for figuring out who's a good coach or not. But it definitely, he should have definitely bailed out on that program.
I'm telling you.
And I don't know if anybody else was up as late as I was, but Coastal Carolina looked physically impressive. I was like, I don't even know the coach is. I'm like, how the hell did he get these players there? Because they just ran over Kansas.
They got NFL guys on that defensive line. They got a better D-line than Florida State, man.
Their D-line was crazy. I'm sitting there like, who are these guys? These guys are all like 6'5", 260-pound mastodons out there. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Those guys go-
Les Miles was like, I took the wrong job. I should have taken Coastal Carolina. He's like, man, I didn't. He's like, I thought this was a guaranteed win coming to Lawrence, man. That
Yeah.
smacked around.
Anyway, that concludes our first week 1 roundtable. Look forward to next week, folks.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
All right.